And plutonium was made for the first time by my guru, Seaborn, in University of California in Berkeley. Anyway, I wanted to know that. So chemistry, that way the modern subject, you see, is only 20th century subject. Because all the elements we only know in 20th century. And that's one thing we should not forget. And I just want to show you to see, the other day, about a year ago, I gave a lecture in Sweden on something on chemistry, what is the frontiers of chemistry. I started the lecture with showing what is the greatest table man has made. I think the greatest table human beings have made is the periodic table. Similarly, what is the greatest chemical reaction? One reaction. So this was the kind of symposium they had. I go, what is one reaction that revolutionized the world? That revolutionized everything. So I gave what that was. So that was one of those very nice meetings we had in Sweden. So this is the table, periodic table. Well, man has made all kinds of compounds. The first compound was made in 1828, I remember there is urea, small compound, still very useful. That means not even 2,000 years, 200 years since we made the first compound. Not even 200 years. Then of course, lots of complex compounds, all kinds of. Today of course, synthesis, anybody can make any compound now. The first man who made the first compound, first man who made the compound, Bohler, 1828, modern organic chemistry, just show one picture, Woodward, all kinds of complex molecules are made. Today synthesis, organic synthesis, has become very common. Well, I hope organic chemists don't mind, I'll tell what I feel about it. You know, they ruled India. The organic chemists who ruled all of chemistry, in fact, all of us people like me had a rough time. They thought what was chemistry, but unfortunately it's all wrong. Unfortunately, they didn't know enough. They all, in fact, today, organic chemistry is such that if you go to Cambridge University, where I'm a professor, or University of California, or Berkeley, where I'm still a professor, I mean, I don't go there, but they call me a professor, I don't know why. Yeah, I don't want to go. My wife doesn't want to travel so much. I'm quite happy in India. But they show me as a professor. But there is not even one professor doing organic synthesis in these universities now. They do synthesis, organic chemists do other things. They use synthesis as one of the techniques, but there are no full-time professors of organic synthesis. In the old days, we went to Delhi University, 8 professors would be there doing organic synthesis. I guess they'll be still there because Delhi University has not yet changed. But all the modern universities have changed, you see. Synthesis has become so routine now, so important yet routine. So it is therefore they do different types of synthesis. I'll talk about it later. Well, again, you should know when modern chemistry, the way we understand it, started. I already told you, is the idea of a chemical bond when it was shown. The 2 electrons between 2 atoms in chemical bond, first shown by Lewis in 1916. So next year is the centenary. I've already told you what one unique thing Jamia Millia can do before anybody else thinks of is the centenary of the chemical bond. 1916, Lewis. And this is Lewis. I'm showing him smoking a cigar. He always know. In fact, in University of California, Berkeley, you knew where the chemistry department was because all you had to follow the cigar smell and you would go to the chemistry department. But the greatest mind, he was the greatest chemist of the 20th century. I would put Linus Pauling below him. I would not put Linus Pauling above him, certainly. If you don't forget Linus Pauling, Nature of the Chemical Bond, he dedicated to Ian Lewis. This is Linus Pauling, when he started working on the chemical bond, just got married. You see, his wife and Linus Pauling at the age of 26, starting the work on chemical. All the time I'm showing pictures of old fellows. I want to see once in a young fellows also. So I thought it would be nice to show young fellows. Why did I say Lewis? Well, I will take 2 minutes. He did so many new chemical bond was his idea. Chemical thermodynamics was the creation of Ian Lewis. The idea of fugacity, activity, all these words were created by him. He is the first man who made Lewis acid, Lewis bases. For the first man to do photochemistry. The word photon was his word. We use photon. Who created photon? Lewis. But he was a professor of chemistry, famous man. But unfortunately, he never got a Nobel Prize. So many of his students got Nobel Prizes except him. And in fact, mainly because people were very unhappy because he used to correct everybody. For example, Nernst had a heat theorem, which later became known as third law of thermodynamics. He made a mistake, Nernst. He said free energy is equal to enthalpy at T equal to 0, which is not correct. Immediately, Lewis corrected it free energy is equal to enthalpy at T equal to 0, only if S is equal to 0. Like that, the very fundamental things he did, so he never got a Nobel Prize. In the end, he was nominated 35 times for a Nobel Prize. I've gone through papers, when chemical bond, he was nominated for 15 times. You know what Nobel Committee said? I don't think chemical bond is important for chemistry. At that time, that's what they said, not now. Then he discovered Lewis acids and Lewis bases. The PhD thesis of Glenn Seaborg was Lewis acids, Lewis bases. He said, I don't think Lewis acids and Lewis bases will be accepted by chemists so much. Every time they would be told. And in the end, his own student, Harold Urey, discovered the element deuterium, heavy hydrogen. And when it was discovered, heavy hydrogen, and Lewis said, well, what is the use of just heavy hydrogen element? You must make a compound. He was the first one to make D2O, heavy water, in Berkeley. And he did all the, 23 papers on use of heavy water, thermodynamics, spectroscopy, effect on protein, effect on proteins, all kinds of papers. In the end, a Nobel Prize was announced only for Urey for discovering the element, no heavy water. So it's one of those sad cases. So those people who say, oh, Nobel Prize, why is it we don't get Nobel Prize? Why is it India doesn't have? It's not so simple. If Lewis cannot get it, there is no other chemist who would get it, actually. That's the end. But that's how life is. You see, you can't work there to get a Nobel Prize. If you don't get it, you must not forget. Well, you have to go on because that's how life is. In the end, of course, he dies. His death is a very unusual death. He tells his student, who was my very great friend, Michael Kasha, spectroscopist in Florida. I think he just died. He was 90 years old. Michael was doing his PhD, last PhD student of Urey. He tells Michael Kasha, Michael, I want you to do an experiment on the spectrum of some compound in liquid HCN, liquid hydrocyanic acid. Kasha says, sir, I won't do that. HCN is a poison. I can't do that. I can't make HCN liquid. No, you go to lunch and come back. I will make it for you. He was a great experimentalist. When he came back, looks to the lab, there was a bulb of HCN on the vacuum line and another ampere of HCN which had broken open. There was Lewis like that in a chair, died. Did he commit suicide because of disappointment? Or he man who created the chemical bond? Or was it a suicide or just an accidental death? I always used to ask my teacher, when I did my postdoc, Kenneth Pitzer always used to say, he was such a brilliant man, he would make a suicide look like an accident. So he just passed away. It was the greatest stories of chemistry. But I give a 1-hour lecture for the man who did not get the prize on Lewis. Today I'm not giving that, but I've already told you. Well, see, quickly, chemistry became full of atoms, molecules, structures, mechanisms in 1930 to 1970, after the discovery of the chemical bond and later. I am the child of that period. So I come from that. I was born in 34, 1951 I did my MSc. See, I'm saying 1951 I joined MSc, I was 17 years old. I finished my MSc when I was 19. In fact, at that time, of course, many things happened. This happened, 1951. The protein, alpha helix structure was solved. And you see historically what is important to that. That is the birth of molecular biology. Unfortunately, stupid chemists didn't understand that. They let biologists take over. I think molecular biology should have been part of chemistry, really. It was discovery of Linus Pauling. And Linus Pauling, when he did that, I didn't understand. I still remember, I wrote to Linus Pauling, dear Professor Pauling, a very great man, I just read his book, Nature of the Chemical Bond. Can I come and work with you for PhD? He wrote back, dear Mr. Rao, thank you very much. You want to do molecular structure. I no longer work on molecular structure, I work on proteins. There was no one to explain to me what that meant, what that letter meant. So he asked me, why don't you work with one of my former students who does a lot of structure of molecules. In fact, I did my PhD partly on structure of molecules by electron diffraction and so on. Doesn't matter. But anyway, that was the story of 1951. This is how Linus Pauling looked. And he got a Nobel Prize in 1954 for Nature of the Chemical Bond. Now, Leon Lewis was dead by the time. And that's it. And chemistry had a lot of aspects of structure, synthesis, and dynamics. And what happened was, why chemistry has changed, what I told you about organic chemistry, the tremendous influx of biology in chemistry, tremendous influx of advanced materials in chemistry after 70s. So chemistry is no longer the same. If you take what are the main streams of chemistry today, it has something to do with materials or biology today. Of course, other things are there, you can do other things, but that's not important, not so important. Well, that's what has happened. Chemistry has changed. I told you, for example, why did it happen? The history says the National Academy of Science in the US has said the reason chemistry became important in materials is because of this one discovery. When high temperature superconductivity was discovered in 1986 December, everybody wanted to make superconductors at liquid nitrogen temperature, above 77 K, because this is the compound 1, 2, 3, Ba2C through 7, and this was made by 3-4 laboratories, and that type of synthesis is the one made chemistry important. So chemistry became part of modern material science, and that is why materials became important in chemistry. Today, of course, there are so many journals on materials. In fact, I have been working in this area actively as a professor for 55 years. I became in 1959 till now, for 56 years to be honest. And when I started working, people used to joke with me, what is all these materials, what is this solid state? Or they would joke about what I was doing. And then, I just keep quiet. What do I do? Today, of course, everybody thinks it's such an old subject. They think I'm the grandfather of this subject. In fact, I was in a conference a few years, 2-3 years ago, in Frankfurt or somewhere, I don't remember, in Europe. I had just given a talk in this big international conference along with a friend of mine. And then this man comes and says, Professor Rao, I heard your talk. It was a very nice talk. But there was some other person with your name who had done this work many years ago. I think by now he must be dead. He said, no, I told him, no, that is also me. So this actually happened to me, so it's very interesting. So I grew up with this subject of advanced materials. Well, chemists have done nothing. Fullerenes, C60 was discovered in 1985, made in the laboratory in 1981. Nanotubes discovered properly in 1991. So many things. Today what has happened to chemistry is, it's no longer the old molecules, synthesis, fumes, all kinds of stinking thing and so on. And chemistry has gone beyond the molecule. It's beyond the molecular frontier. In chemistry, we worry about therapies, living systems, complex chemistry of the sea, atmosphere and earth, materials by design, different type of approach to chemistry. That is what has happened to chemistry of today. So every subject is changing. I want you to know that. That is my point, my lecture. I can't talk on biology so well. I can talk in chemistry and physics. What has happened to chemistry is, people used to say, oh, we are doing very interdisciplinary work in this university. Well, even chemistry itself is interdisciplinary. You don't have to go to some other place. If you want to be a very good chemist, at least in my field, you must know enough physics, computation, maybe even biology, certainly organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry. You can't say, I'm a physical chemist, I won't do it. No, that days is over. The highly interdisciplinary subject, isn't it? Well, a lot of young people ask me, what is it I should do? The reason I'm telling you this is, Michael Faraday said about I hope you know two things about Michael Faraday was asked about science. He said two things. In science, picking the problem is difficult. Doing is easy, he said. Unfortunately, in India, we pick all wrong problems. That's why India is not so well known. People say, why is it India not so well known? Most Indians do a wonderful job of a useless problem. Write a wonderful paper that nobody reads. They solve a wonderful physics, right? Theory, wonderful, but nobody is interested in that problem. You have to pick the right problem. That is where you see we are having problem in India. In fact, I go to China, for every Indian scientist, there are 100 Chinese scientists today. The numbers is unbelievable. Institute, huge amount of money they give people. They try everything. Oh my God, they're producing 30,000. As of next year, they want to produce 30,000 PhDs per year. I don't know why. Every sweeper will have a PhD very soon in China. But they will have, but why they want, I don't know, you have to ask the Chinese. But there's another way of doing it. But my thing is quality, you have to improve quality. Improve quality in such a way in India, if India has to have a future, the main thing in India, in every sphere, whether it's industry, education, science, quality improvement is number one. So I would say development, our Prime Minister says, development with quality improvement, it has to be. With lousy quality we have, development, nothing will happen. Everything is second-rate work, poor quality. Well, Faraday is second, other than another. I hope you know that this is meant for, I publish a lot. I write about 25 papers a year, average. I'm not ashamed because, I'm also cited very highly. I have a total citation of about 77,000 now. And our H index, you all know H index. Our H index has just reached 121. So you can see that. The reason I'm saying is, don't be ashamed of publishing. If you have something good to publish it. Don't care what others say. That is a problem. Very afraid, young people are afraid there's a good idea whether to publish or not, when they get all upset. If it's a very good idea, don't ever stop. As Faraday again was asked, what is science? This young boy asked me in college, a school. He said, no, science is very simple. He said, work, finish and publish. I hope you remember. Work, finish and publish. Okay. Well, they asked me, what should we work on? Here is a very good example. Energy is a very important problem. Hydrogen, solar energy, fuel cells, batteries, supercapacitors, I didn't mention. All this requires a lot of chemistry, physics, material science, a lot of chemistry in this. In that particularly hydrogen, if you want, the best way to make hydrogen would be by artificial photosynthesis. I hope you all remember what plants do. If not, I will tell you in 1 minute or one sentence. They take sunlight, the sunlight excites an electron in photosystem 2. It creates a hole, and that hole immediately pulls out an electron from the water oxidation complex in the chlorophyll. And that water oxidation complex now is part of an electron, so it pulls out an electron from water, and water gets oxidized, and you get oxygen. It is very difficult to oxidize water to get oxygen in the laboratory, by the way, even today. But plants do, leaves do all the time produce oxygen, so you and I can breathe. And the other one, the electron that gets excited, that gets destroyed for a chain of cascade of reactions. But another electron that gets excited in photosystem 1 is the one that produces food, reduction, and so on. And we can do the same thing. We can produce oxygen, maybe if not, but that's not important. We can use the electron excited in a particular system, in a semiconductor or a dye or whatever you're using, for producing hydrogen artificially using artificial photosynthesis. In fact, 2 months ago, President Obama in the United States has declared artificial photosynthesis a national mission. I think it will be a very good thing to be a national mission for India, because God Almighty has given us a lot of sunlight. That is the only thing, in fact, we have in plenty. Like all poor countries are given 2 things, you know that, no? Sunlight. All poor countries have sunlight. The rich countries don't have sunlight. See, that's very interesting. So God always picks something He gives, and that sunlight we have to use. Okay. And there are a lot of things one can do. In fact, I told you one story about sunlight and about water. This is a book published in 1874 by Jules Verne in The Mysterious Island. He says, and what will they burn instead of coal? Asked Pencroft. Water, replied Harding. But water decomposed into its primitive elements? Yes, my friends, I believe that water will one day be employed as fuel. That hydrogen and oxygen, which constitute it, will furnish an inexhaustible source of heat and light. Water will be the core of the future. You decompose water, get hydrogen. You burn hydrogen, get back water. That's what it is. And get energy. I think this is a very good problem. I just can go on talking like this for hours. I don't want to bore you. But I would like to close my talk with a few general comments on science. I have been doing research for the last 60, how many years now? 64 years. Of which I've been 56 years as a professor. It's a wonderful thing. I feel there's nothing which can keep man happier than a science. If you're really interested in what you're doing, look at, I feel so young, so happy. In fact, I'm the happiest man I know. I don't know it. I don't see anybody else. I don't see many happy people because they want this. I meet my old students. There are billions. One of them, I asked them, how much money have you made? I asked him, sir, I just have $6 or $7 billion. Not million. Billion, bhai. I hope you know what billion is. I don't even know what it is. It's so much money. That fellow looks like this. Crazy. All these rich fellows, all the fellows who are very powerful, you get a good administrator in Delhi. After retired, you must see him. He's look a pale shadow of himself. After that power is gone, he's nobody. But for me, my power comes from science. I can't be last. I will never be last in this world because science gives me that power. I can be honest. Science gives you sincerity. Science gives you honesty. If you're a real scientist, you'll never utter a lie. I can tell you, assure you this crowd, in my life I've never uttered a lie. However unpleasant, I've told you the unpleasant truth. Many people have been upset by that, but nothing can be done. But science is the one that gives you fearlessness. Half the people are afraid of something, they tell you lies. Entire governments and countries are run by lies because people are afraid to tell the truth. Science makes you fearless. It's a very important thing. And also unselfish. You know, being unselfish, all our religions say that. Do something to the other man. Every religion says that. Help somebody else. Science is a wonderful way to train young people. When a young boy or girl comes to work with you, give everything you have to them. Everything. There's nothing that you stop at because you want